Hey, what's up everybody? It's Jason. I hope you're doing well. Today we're doing another album review, and this time it's Colter Wall's latest, Western Swing and Waltzes and Other Punchy Songs.
What are these weird symbols?
The man who kills me will know.
So Western Swing and Waltzes was the first song off the album, is also the lead single for the album, and could probably be technically considered the title track. So the great thing about kicking off the album with this song is that it's kind of a showcase for what you're in for the rest of the album. He brought in his own 5-piece set band, pretty much the band he plays with live when he goes on tour, and there's not really a sound or an instrument that's in this song that you don't hear throughout the rest of the album. So in that sense, it really gives you a taste of what you're in for. On top of that, I think this is the best song off of the album vocally. There's a lot of refrain in his voice, and it just keeps him from getting into those really low, powerful notes that he's kind of known for at this point. And it shows a different side, I think, than what we've heard before. The next song I want to talk about is called Big Iron, and it's a little further down on the track list. It's actually a cover of a Marty Robbins song. It came off the album, I think, Gunfighter Ballads, way back in, I want to say, like 1959, 1958, something like that. And just do yourself a favor, if you're a fan of this type of music, Colter Wall's music, just check out Marty Robbins. I think he's one of the originals, one of the greats when it comes to like Western storytelling ballads. But with that, I hate to say this because, again, it is a cover, but Big Iron was actually my favorite song off the album. But with that said, this certainly isn't like a beat for beat cover of the song. I think Colter Wall puts his own spin on it, and a lot of that has to do with the instrumentation behind it. He's actually expanded on the song in that respect by adding more instruments. In his version of the song, you hear more banjo, more fiddle, definitely a lot of slide guitar, and it actually does a really cool thing where it makes the song a little more lively. Obviously, it's very much like a storytelling song, so adding those instruments in there adds almost to the drama of it, if you will. It kind of actually reminds me of, like, have you ever seen those silent movies where there's like a piano player in the background and it just cuts to like a title card? It's like, anyways. The point is, this is one of my favorite songs off the album, and not just because it was a cover of one of my favorite songs pretty much of all time, but because Colter Wall does end up putting his own spin on it, and I think it makes things more interesting, more fun, more lively to listen to. And I could probably go on and on about each song on the album, but I want to make sure that I touch on the fact that this album really shines for me, and it really works for me because it has a storytelling quality to it. I mean, lyrically and musically, these are authentic Western country ballads, and with that in your head, it's almost every time that you listen to this song, you can picture the characters, you can picture what they're going through, their actions, even their thoughts and feelings sometimes, and that's, to me, just really impressive from a musicality standpoint, to see how you can shove all that into like a 3-minute time period, a 4-minute time period, whatever it may be. You don't hear songs like that anymore very often, and when you do, and let alone have an entire album almost made up of those kinds of songs, you can't help but stop and appreciate how just amazing it is and how much thought and energy went into making it. And to me, the best example of it off the album was Diamond Joe. I mean, even the first time I listened to it, I could almost picture a little movie of everything going on in my head. And I guess when it comes to songs, an emotional response is more common in music, but a visual response, even though I have astigmatism in this eye, a visual response is something even more rare. So this album also marks Colter Wall's first time in the producer's seat. This is his 4th studio album, I believe, but first time as a producer. So I actually didn't learn that fact until the second time I listened to the album, which going into it for the second time made it a lot more interesting to listen to songs like Talkin' Prairie Boy and, God, I want to call it I Ride an Old Paint / something. There's another half of that title. But I called out those two songs, especially Talkin' Prairie Boy in particular, because they sound really raw, unedited, and just like played it into a microphone, recorded it, and that was the cut that made it onto the album. And that's certainly not a negative. I actually really enjoyed listening to Talkin' Prairie Boy. It felt like if Western country had a diss track against millennials, that's what it would be. But I just thought it was really interesting that on his first go-round as producer, Colter Wall decided to put those kinds of songs that sounded so unedited and so raw into the album. And unfortunately, now is a part of the review where we go into the negatives of the album, or at least what I think are the negatives of the album. But I'm happy to say that from my point of view, there's really only one thing that stuck out as potentially negative to me for this album. And that was that the sound that really defines this album, Colter Wall's sound maybe even, and definitely the sound of, classic country Western music, could get a little bit repetitive. And I could see how, especially if you're listening to the album like from start to finish, how it might be a little bit laboring to listen to it the entire time. I mean, to me, the sound of the guitar was especially guilty of this. I heard a lot of the same strumming patterns being used over and over, and I think I heard a lot of the same chords being recycled too throughout the songs. So you end up basically getting a sound kind of like this. Or if not something like that, maybe a little bit more something like this. And then a harmonica or a fiddle would come in. And on top of that, and I hope I'm right about this part, otherwise I'm probably just going to sound like an ass, but a lot of the songs sounded like they were in the key of G, which of course to me just adds to the repetition. But fortunately, I think the songs on the album are really well placed, so tracks like Big Iron or High and Mighty do a really good job of kind of breaking up that sound, so you have more high energy songs and low energy songs, and I think it's a good mix, so you don't just get that straight, like, zoned out feeling the entire way through. But I will say that Houlihans at the Holiday Inn was actually my least favorite song on the album. It's the last track on the album as well. To me, it just sounds like a really personal song about maybe memories that he has at Houlihans at the Holiday Inn, and because of that, I found it a little bit inaccessible. I mean, you know, if you couldn't tell by my lack of spurs and cowboy boots, I'm from the East Coast, not anywhere near the Midwest or West, so it was just an issue of accessibility for me. But you know, ultimately, that's actually why I love this album so much. I mean, the genre of music is so niche, and the sound, I mean, to get this kind of an album in 2020, decades after its time has passed, I guess you could say, to me, it's really amazing that there's still people out there making music like this. And it's just become one of those things that you either get it or you don't. And with that, I feel like Colter Wall really just wasn't making this album for anyone but himself. You know, there wasn't really a lot of artistic compromise. He wasn't trying to please a bunch of different crowds. There's just one specific type of person that he was making this music for, and that was himself. And with that, you know, especially as a producer this time around, I really think that he set out to make the album that he wanted to make. And whenever an artist can do that, I think it makes for a great album. And because of that, I think Western Swingin' Waltzes and Other Punchy Songs is a real spittoon-hitting, 10-gallon hat, tobacco-spitting, authentic cowboy country album, which to me equates to a 9 out of 10. Alright, so that's going to do it for this review, and again, if you guys like Colter Wall's music, be sure to check out Marty Robbins' Gunfighter Ballads and his other albums. I think they go hand in hand and obviously were a huge influence on Colter Wall, so do yourself a favor. And until then, if you enjoyed the content, if you could please give a big thumbs up or subscribe below, that really helps me out. Till next time, stay safe, be kind. Thank you.